Hello and welcome to the Lancashire Teaching Hospital's Recruitment podcast. I'm Will. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but today I am joined by
Katie.
And Katie, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
So I am a recruitment officer who works obviously within the wider recruitment team, and I primarily deal with the surgery recruitment, but I also do a bit of bank as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on today, Katie. I know you've got a keen interest in this. For a couple of reasons, which we'll touch on now, because today's podcast is all about Lancashire Day.
Yes.
Yeah. And Lancashire Day, for those who maybe don't know, is a celebration of all things Lancashire. We'll go into the history, why it's important, why we celebrate it. I think it's fair to say it's grown a lot in the last 10 to 15 years, especially because of the business groups around Lancashire who use it as a platform quite clearly to promote all things good about Lancashire. But as well as being a recruitment officer with the Trust, you have a history degree.
Yes, I do have a history degree. I did that part-time, so I feel like, it's got, the historical standpoint has a lot of interest to me personally, and also, like you said, it's just such a lovely area. So it's a perfect podcast.
It's a perfect podcast. I've got to say, I am really looking forward to this episode. Clearly we're both Lancastrian, technically, as we'll get into now.
Depends on the dates, yeah.
Well, yeah, because we should probably address that straight away. Because today, Lancashire is much smaller than its historical extent, and this is due to the County Council reform in 1974. But for the purpose of today and Lancashire Day and this podcast, we are discussing the Palatine County of Lancashire, aren't we?
Yeah, which is obviously a lot wider area to what we know Lancashire to be today.
Yeah.
Because 74, I think, was even before your time.
It is considerably, yes, considerably before my time. Now, that is the easiest way to describe the Palatine Counties for those who are not old enough to remember the pre-1974 world, as it were, and the reforms to county councils. So it means, for the purpose of this episode, just for a moment, Greater Manchester and Merseyside especially are ceremonial and metropolitan counties that they don't exist for this, because they are part of Lancashire and geographically part of Lancashire, and technically, geographically, that still exists as Lancashire. It's only from a ceremonial and metropolitan, basically how the money's split, that they exist. So I'll do my best to describe very quickly the shape of this Lancashire. You can Google it, please do have a look at it, and we'll try and get a graphic up now as well. But Lancashire runs from the banks of the Mersey, past Formby and the Ribble Estuary, past Blackpool and Fleetwood to Morecambe Bay. It includes the Furness Peninsula, including Grange-over-Sands, Ulverston, Coniston, even Hawkshead, and the western shoreline of Lake Windermere. And this was called North of the Sands, and is separated by the Bay and Westmoreland, which obviously was carved up and changed into Cumbria, but that cuts a square shape between the two parts of Lancashire. Are you keeping track with this?
Yeah, I'm trying to visualise it. When you start describing it, it gets a lot bigger.
It's a really hard shape to describe.
And no wonder they trimmed it down and made it smaller, because it is.
Yeah. And this is where things really change now. So a big chunk of the northeastern corner of the Forest of Bowland was actually in Yorkshire, whereas today the eastern border kind of runs diagonally southeast from Wennington, which is near Bentham. See, we are going all over Lancashire in this. Like we are turning all sorts of corners. So it goes from Bentham through Tosside to Barnoldswick, Irby down to Wycoller towards Bacup and Haslingden. And then the Palatine County continues to run south and includes Rochdale, Oldham, East Manchester, before turning west at Stockport and kind of curving underneath South Manchester, running back towards Warrington, Widnes, Hale and the Mersey Estuary. So that's a huge area. And and today it has a population of around 5.5 million, which is substantially higher than the 1.3 million in the Lancashire County Council area. But obviously that includes Manchester and Liverpool as well. So that's why the population is so big. And this is why I'm saying that you are from Lancashire, because
Yeah.
yeah, where are you from, Katie?
So I'm from Rochdale, kind of. So yeah, I never really knew actually it came under Lancashire until I've had these conversations. Although my grandparents used to describe it as Lancashire, but you kind of just ignore
See,
that.
I think that's really interesting. I think
Yeah.
it is a generation thing. If you knew it before, I have it. People say, "Oh, Blackburn, Lancashire," but Bolton, Lancashire. And maybe they forget a little bit about You probably feel more associated with Manchester than you do.
Yeah,
Lancashire.
definitely. Yeah.
But Liverpool, the Beatles, are from Lancashire. It's there.
Would you get that right in a pub quiz though, if you put them from Lancashire?
Well, if it's me doing the pub quiz, then yeah. If I'm,
Right.
I suppose how pedantic is the quiz master?
It depends where you get asked the question, I guess.
Yeah. A lot of debate to be had around pub quiz questions and authenticity of answer. Anyway, so the history now. The county didn't exist in 1086 in the Domesday Book. It was created in 1182, which makes it one of the youngest traditional counties. So before the Norman conquest of 1066, there's obviously been Roman settlements and Viking influences, as seen through names in places like Ribchester, which is where I'm from. We've got Roman ruins and Roman bathhouse. Go and visit, a lovely Roman museum. And Goosner, which is clearly a Viking name. I think it means something on the hill. Goose Hill or Gordon's Hill or something like that. Don't quote me, but yeah, have a look into it if you're into it. If you're interested in local history, there's loads of stuff in this episode for you. And the name Lancashire comes from Lancaster, and the name means Roman fort on the River Lune. So, Katie, let's segue a moment, we'll come back to the history. Why Lancashire Day? Why is it? What day is it on? And why is it?
Yeah, so I feel like we missed that point out at the start. So Lancashire Day is on the 27th of November, and it was launched in the mid-90s by a group of Lancashire people. But yeah, it's on the 27th of November, and it's quite a special day because this was the day that first elected representatives were called to Westminster by King Edward I to attend what would become known as the Model Parliament, which is obviously is what we know as Parliament, and calling people to vote and to pick our laws.
Excellent. Yeah, no, so that's it. That's basically what it is. So it's essentially, in a nutshell, the first time that Lancashire was allowed or selected to send an MP, a representative, to Westminster. And this is, it should worth mentioning, this is back in the Middle Ages, so it's a long time ago. And that's where the idea of Lancashire Day comes from. So right, okay, let's go back into the history. So before the Romans came, the north of England was inhabited by the Brigantes tribe, and the Cumbria Highland region was a tribe called Caveti. And these are essentially farmers with small holdings, shaved heads, moustaches, blue paint. They spoke a kind of Celtic dialect, probably similar to Welsh. That's what the historians say. And then during the mid-8th century, the area was incorporated into the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria. And from the north of the River Ribble and the kingdom of Mercia from the south, they both became parts of England in the 10th century. So that's when England as a whole, you've got places like Mercia coming together and being what we would now recognise as in England. Anyway, jump forward a few years now to the Norman conquest, and William the Conqueror gives the area between the Ribble and the Mersey to a bloke called Roger de Potoy. Potoy? He's French.
Sounds somewhat French.
Yeah, he is French. He's a French knight, and this is what William did, was reward his knights from 1066 when they invaded the British Isles, and yeah, carved it up, gave it as a reward.
You do a good job.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Well done for fighting at Hastings.
Yeah.
Here's a bit of land for you.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. So William the Conqueror dies, and his son William II comes to the throne. However, as you know with your history degree,
Yep.
he isn't the eldest son. Okay, Robert Courthouse is, and but for William and his eldest son Robert had a falling out. Now I've included this because I think it's quite amusing. Maybe our listeners will too. It comes down to a prank apparently that involved a chamber pot on one of their heads. And I say one of their heads because different sources have it as different story, either it being on William's head or Robert's head or one of the brothers' heads. Let's just go with chamber pot, foul liquid being poured on someone. So they had a falling out. Robert goes skulking off. Bit of an overreaction. Decides to attempt to seize a castle at Rouen in France. This fails, and Robert was forced to flee into exile. And that's why, when it comes to William dying, Courthouse is out, and William II is on the throne. But meanwhile, back in Lancashire, there's a bit of toing and throwing. Land's taken away, given back to Roger. And like I said, we don't have time on the podcast to get bog down into it, so we'll sum it really quickly. In 1102, Roger backs Robert Courthouse in a rebellion against Henry I, and guess what? It fails. The lands are taken away, and for the purpose of our story, things kind of settle, and eventually you get the House of Lancaster, which was created by King Henry III of England when he created the Earldom of Lancaster. So there's a historical sidestep. If you're interested, you can see Roger on a stained glass window at Lancaster Priory.
Wow.
Still there.
I've never been to Lancaster Priory,
No,
so...
maybe it's worth a day out.
See Roger, yeah?
To see Roger. And Lancaster's a nice place.
Yes, I have actually been to Lancaster. That's
Yeah.
nice. It's not been to...
Yeah. So Robert Courthouse and his dad William did eventually make up for the sake of a Queen Matilda. Robert then went on crusade, and he ultimately returns to the UK, by which time William II's dead and succeeded by Henry I. And this is when the failed rebellion takes place. And Robert dies in Cardiff in 1134 in his mid-80s. So he's lived quite a life.
Not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Keep going with the Lancashire thing, because I know we've mentioned that the House of Lancaster starts to come into it now. A lot of people associate Lancaster with the War of the Roses, which is the...
Well, you've got what most people, I guess, would be the red rose and the white rose.
Yeah.
And it's still so iconic today, I reckon. But yeah, it's the House of York versus the House of Lancaster in the 15th century.
Yeah.
And it resulted in the victory for the House of Lancaster. And yeah, the start of the Tudor times, which is such an iconic part of history. Everybody knows the Tudors. Probably got the most interesting history. But yeah, even today, the red rose is everywhere.
That's it.
And it's our rose, the Lancaster rose.
Exactly. So yeah, the War of the Roses, 1455 to 1487. So that's a long time. It's 30 odd years. The House of Lancaster victorious, but they lost their male heir when the Prince of Wales, Edward of Lancaster, was killed at age 17 at the Battle of Tewkesbury. Henry VI died a few weeks later at the Tower of London, having been caught by Yorkists. So it's a very topsy-turvy time. If you're into history, this is all Richard III, rebellions, marriages, illegitimacy, claims to the throne, etc. All that's going on. Very Games of Thrones, actually. Really Games of Thrones if you're into that. And like I said, loads to go into, we're not touching upon it, but the Tudors, like you say, they'd backed the House of Lancaster, because the House of Lancaster was more powerful than the Tudor family, but they had an old family connection through the Beauforts and John of Gaunt, and Henry Tudor and his army beat Richard III of Bosworth Field, and then King Henry VII of England was proclaimed. So yeah, there you go, that's the connection between Lancaster and the Crown as well. Due to its location, like many northern counties, obviously we were attacked by Scottish raids. King David I of Scotland, Battle of Clitheroe, which is a battle not really spoke about, 1138, meaning that we were briefly part of Scotland. That's interesting. Robert the Bruce and the Great Raid of 1322, that came as far south as Chorley, which we haven't mentioned yet, and we do have a hospital in Chorley, so we will talk about Chorley. The Jacobites took Preston, Battle of Preston, 1715. This is also often thought of to be the last battle on British soil, but it's not to be, or certainly English soil, I should say, not to be confused with the Battle of Preston, 1648, which is Civil War and Oliver Cromwell, New Model Army and all of that. There's a brilliant piece at the Harris Museum when it reopens all about Battle of Preston, which I've seen before and highly recommend if you're into history, Harris Museum. In 1745, Bonnie Prince Charlie marched his Jacobites through Lancashire and gained supporters from Manchester, only for them to retreat, and then the next year they were beaten at the Battle of Culloden. So we've got a lot of blood and battles here as well. Well, I'm pleased to say that things kind of calmed down a bit, because this is where Lancashire gets really well known for, is come the 18th century, really well established for having cottage weavers. You'll see that some villages and towns still have weavers' cottages with the windows, with either at the basement or the top.
Yep.
That basically increased exports of cotton required innovation, and people like John Kay, the inventor of the flying shuttle, Richard Arkwright, spinning frame, Samuel Crompton, the spinning mule, and James Hargreaves, the spinning jenny, were all from Lancashire. So these inventions scaled up cotton production and helped put Lancashire at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. So cities like Liverpool and Manchester grew in size and population, as did towns like Barrow-in-Furness, Burnley, Blackburn, Rochdale, Oldham, Preston, Bury and Wigan. You can't mention this. There's a bit of a dark side of this though, which is of course the slave trade, which is again a far bigger subject than we can cover in the podcast episode, but I think that we should give it a bit of a mention here, don't you think, Katie?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You know, it was part of the trade in the 17th century.
Yeah.
And it grew into the fourth largest slave trade in central England. This
is Lancaster, isn't it?
Yes, it's Lancaster, sorry.
Yeah.
So that highlights Lancashire's role in slavery. Clearly Liverpool was involved, and so was Preston, but to a much lesser extent. But yeah, ships left Preston for Africa and transported slaves, taken with them Lancashire cheeses to export. There is an international slavery museum. It's based at Liverpool Docks as part of the Merseyside Maritime Museum. I've never personally been, but I know people who have been, and they said it's really interesting, really fascinating, and like you said, it's quite a dark time of our history.
I never did it in school. We did bits about the Industrial Revolution, but we never talked about the implications of. We kind of said, well, Lancashire had a really good climate for cotton, for cotton production. But then obviously clearly it's linked to the slave trade through either its picking in America and its export with the slave triangle and the pathways.
Definitely. We do quite well at kind of not really mentioning that part of our history, and kind of talking about the abolishment of it and our involvement. But it's it's still part of our history, whether it's right or
Absolutely. And like you say, there's the Merseyside Maritime Museum, which is worth a visit. There's also the Maritime Museum in Lancaster that covers the transatlantic slave trade. So if you are interested in finding out more, I was really surprised to hear that Preston had ships that went to Africa and transported slaves. But when you think about it, well, there's a dock, so at the time it was obviously done. So probably shouldn't be surprised. But this, it should be discussed, and knowledge does need to increase. So the British abolished the Atlantic slave trade in 1807, but as I've alluded to, slave labour was still used in the cotton picking southern states for another 60 years. And it wasn't until 1833 that the British abolished slavery. So yeah, definitely. By this time, Lancashire was a hothouse of industry. You know, the railways and the canals had come, the factories, Barrow in Furness, building ships, you know, doing the steel works, and then places Blackburn, Accrington, Manchester with the mills and
Definitely, yeah.
Bolton, you know, Preston as well. So there's so much there. But how about Lancashire today? How do you feel about Lancashire today?
I mean, yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, I think in some industries it's still leading and being at the forefront, especially you know, with the biggest aerospace provider, or one of the biggest in the UK. So I think in terms of industry, we've got that, but a lot of places have changed, and a lot of places have the same challenges and like the social challenges of a lot of the country. But in terms of someone who's not grown up here and kind of not got that same community as a local person, I think it's a great place to live. And I do, I would say that I do love living here and working here. And my favourite thing about Preston is the fact that everything is close enough to visit, close enough to go to. And as someone who is into history, the history of the place, it's everywhere. So yeah, I think.
No, I agree. I think you're right. You know, a lot of our towns have obviously gone through a kind of post-industrial stage. Fair to say some places do have their challenges. There is deprivation, there's social challenges. Like you would get anywhere in the country, you know, there's places across the country that have issues. And maybe a bit of an identity crisis. But I think there's so many reasons to be optimistic now. You know, Preston is changing. There's investment. South Ribble, the Ribble Valley, Fylde. There's affluent places here, and there's things happening. You know, you talk about the Preston model in Preston, particularly. The partnerships in business and the local community, between institutions and professions. I think it's a really exciting place, and I've noticed a big change since I went to college here, not quite
20 years ago.
Not quite 20 years ago, but yeah, 20 years ago. And then I've lived in Manchester and Cardiff and come back, and yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Preston and Chorley now and Blackburn and the local area. I think that things are changing for the better and moving, and there's investment happening. I do bang that drum unapologetically. I do think there's definitely reasons to be optimistic. And again, like you say about the location, I'm also aware that it's a bit of a joke when people say, well, why is it so great to them? I'm like, well, you're an hour from the Lake District, you're 45 minutes from Manchester, you're an hour from Liverpool, you can be in the Yorkshire Dales in 45 minutes.
You can be on the big one in 40 minutes.
Blackpool, yeah exactly. And I know that makes it sound like you want to leave here, but it's so.
That's why it's perfect.
It is so. Yeah. It's so well connected, and you know, we've not even. Lancashire is 80% rural.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're into walking or a nice pub lunch on a Sunday, you know, cycling, running, or getting outdoors, bird watching, but
got the Guild Wheel, yeah.
Guild Wheel, the Guild Wheel is fantastic.
I've not done that yet. That's still on my list.
No, it's
still on my list.
You don't need to do all of it in one go. I do tell people.
You'll never see me again if I do it in one go.
You can break it up into sections. Yeah, there's no pressure. I think there's loads of reasons to be optimistic about the future and living here and why it's so great. I mean, I'm biased. I've got family connections. I was born and raised here myself. But I've consciously made a decision to raise my family here as well. So, and there's obvious reasons for that. Which I think leads us nicely to education, really, in here. We have got a lot, again, we could do a whole podcast episode about schools and education universities here. Because historically we've got some fantastic institutions, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if we're looking at the wider Lancashire, you've got Manchester, all the universities based there.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the University of Manchester, Manchester Metropolitan, Salford, the universities in Liverpool, which is Liverpool John Moores, the University of Liverpool, Liverpool Hope, Edge Hill. Can you count that as Liverpool?
I think they
might get a bit offended.
Ormskirk, isn't it? Yeah, no,
you got the University of Bolton, Lancaster University, and the biggest provider for Preston is University of Central Lancashire, which is UCLan. And I mean,
lots of our nurses come from UCLan.
Yes, I was going to say that a lot of, you know, you look at all the universities, and a lot of the nurses are from all those different types of universities.
UCLan's reputation has certainly grown in the 20, 30 years that I'm aware of it. I think they do really good forensic sciences.
Yes, they do good forensic science. I mean, engineering. They've got a massive engineering school. I think they've just built that. I think that's been built in the last 5-6 years. UCLan is always expanding. Every time you drive around Preston, they've got a new building.
Reasons to be optimistic.
Well, we did a recruitment event at the new building at UCLan.
We did last year, didn't we?
And
was that last year? This year?
Last year. April, I think. Oh, I don't know.
Don't ask.
Which is last year, kind of. I don't know. It feels that long ago. Which was really nice. Really amazing.
It's a great building.
Yeah, definitely. But there's so much there's so many different types of universities.
I think that's really important as well, because I know there's a bit of like a brain drain with living so close to Liverpool, Manchester, having a great train service. You can be in Glasgow in a couple of hours, you know. This is, even Edinburgh, this is why having a first class university here and keeping those young people here is really important for the growth of Preston and the area.
Definitely. I know we have a internal-ish programme for the medical students for the University of Manchester, which is just brilliant. Some of the best doctors in the country coming into our trust and stuff. So, and like I say, some of the best nurses in the country all around here do the placements here at Lancashire Teaching Hospitals. So, just brilliant, really.
Absolutely. And historically as well, I suppose we've got really good reputation with sixth form colleges and high schools. I'm not going to go into this too much. I've got a bit of a rugby background, and I never played in the school system because I didn't go to a rugby playing school. But when you hear these names, so Fylde College, Cardinal Newman, Runshaw, Lancaster Grammar, Clitheroe Grammar, Queggs in Blackburn, Manchester Grammar, Bury Grammar, Stonyhurst, Hutton, AKS Lytham, which is formerly Arnold School and King Edward VII and Queen Mary School. There's so much educational might in the region, and so much tradition there as well. I know predominantly then that those I've mentioned are fee-paying public schools, but you know there's some really good state schools as well. This one, there's so much variety, there's so much going on here. And we've touched on legend activities and location. You can be in Manchester shopping, you can be in Liverpool shopping. These places are growing. Places like the Trafford Centre, Liverpool One, that they're offering so much. And you're right here amongst them, I think it's really important. So, another one of our passions, which we'll mention really quickly, is sport, because I know, like me, you're into your sport, and obviously that's another Lancashire historically, and now people associate with sport and heritage.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking here, I didn't know this, so 6 of the 12 founding members of the Football League are actually from Lancashire.
Yeah.
And 6 of the 22 founding members of the Premier League are also from the region.
Yeah.
I don't think many of them are still in the Premier League.
Well, I don't. You'd be surprised. Alderman.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's a pub quiz question, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely. Like I say, I didn't know that at all. So we've got Blackpool, Preston North End, Burnley, Blackburn, Manchester City and Manchester United, Liverpool, Everton, Bolton Wanderers, and Accrington Stanley.
Aki Stanley.
And you also got The Dick Ladies as well. So monumental.
Absolutely. I nearly wrote them down and then didn't, because I didn't know if we were going to have time to discuss them.
Well, they're worth a mention.
They're definitely worth a mention. They're totally worth a mention.
It's absolutely brilliant.
I think knowledge of the Dick Ladies has grown massively the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think people from the area as well.
Yeah.
I think it's people are so proud of it.
Lily Parr.
Yeah.
Right, second mention for Goosner. She lived and died in Goosner. I do know that. Yeah.
There you go. That's what I mean. Everybody knows a part of that history. So I play football, and we played a game. I think it was in Bolton. We said we're from Preston, and they ask if you won. We usually say no, and only joking. I hope no one's listened to that. And yeah, this gentleman came over and he said, "Oh, you're from Preston, which is where the Dick Ladies are from." And like I say, people know it from all over and are so proud of it as well.
I have an acquaintance who actually wrote a play all about the Dick Ladies. I think they performed it at the Edinburgh Festival. I think they took it to Edinburgh. Might be wrong with that. Steph, if you're listening, send us a message and let us know about Lily Parr and the Dick Ladies. Yeah. So yeah, you're quite right, and obviously clearly Lancashire Cricket Club, Old Trafford. We've got rugby league teams. Golf. Think of the golf courses around Southport and on Fylde and around there's Lytham. I think Lytham's. Has it held? I don't know. I'm not a golfer. I need Corey. Corey, if you're listening. Yeah, if Corey's listening, tell us all about the what tournaments it's been held, across the region. But definitely there's pedigree there. Speaking of pedigree, let's talk about produce, because obviously I've already touched on it being 80% rural, and that means food. It means farmers.
Another passion of ours, I think, is just talking about food.
Cheese.
Yeah.
Love a bit of cheese.
Absolutely, yeah.
Black pudding from Bury. Bury,
yeah. Bury. It depends who you ask.
Yeah.
See, I'm not from Bury, and I get told I say it wrong all the time. So.
It's a superfood though. It's black pudding, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
No, I'm
not a fan.
Yeah.
I know, and.
In moderation, clearly, but.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing, butter pie.
Never had a butter pie. I know I've just said I really like food, but I just never have. I love, I'm eating potato pie, so I'm never going to pick anything over that if I go out somewhere. Yeah. So someone will have to bring it in.
Thing in Preston, butter pie.
I know.
There'll be people turning off listening to this now because you've not had butter pie.
I did not know it existed until I actually moved up here. And somebody said a butter pie, which I thought was a pie full of butter.
A lot of people make that.
And it does sound really nice, but
it is lovely. Part of a balanced diet. But butter pies are fantastic.
It's on my list with everything else.
Yeah, breweries. We've got. I know there's been a revolution with breweries and microbreweries. We are subject to that as well in Lancashire. We've got a long brewing tradition, places like Thwaites, in Blackburn. We are also part of the
J.W. Lee's as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Boddington's.
Yep.
Also part of the gin revolution. You can't escape it. We have a third time mention of Goosner. There is Goosner gin. It does exist.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's all over. Gin's everywhere. And I think we now need to mention music and the culture, and then we'll talk about our hospitals and towns.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, we touched on it a bit with the Beatles. Again, we're talking old school Lancashire, but the Beatles, one of the famous pop band in the ever.
I think
got to be on it, yeah. Manchester, Oasis.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say Oasis.
It's got to be Oasis, isn't it?
I think now at the moment with them coming back.
They're coming back, yeah.
I think it's who you talk to. If some people, Manchester will be Joy Division, Smiths.
Yeah.
Maybe even the Hollies if you speak to older people,
Well, the people who are from Lancashire. Definitely pre-70s.
But even now, Manchester, Stockport is
That's a bit
Cheshire.
yeah.
It's Cheshire really. But they're still turning people out like Blossoms and
Cortinas. Yeah.
Middleton or Prestwich, your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I'd say it depends who you ask. I wouldn't say Middleton, but
okay.
Yeah, I know someone who knows them, and
yeah,
so it's kind of that same area. But
get them on the podcast.
Yeah, if you're listening. Yeah, Blackpool. Anyone from?
I know that Robert Smith of The Cure was born in Blackpool.
Right.
But they were founded down south, I'm sure. But yeah, no, there must be some Blackpool bands. I know Blackpool now, today, is still really big in the punk scene.
Right, okay.
And the Rebellion Festival happens in Blackpool in August, and is a world-renowned punk festival, and bands come from all over, and people come from all over to Blackpool to see, you know, hardcore punk bands, old school punk bands, new modern punk, ska, reggae bands. They all go to Blackpool in August, and it's kind of I don't want to compare it to everyone's very familiar with the Whitby goth weekends.
I can't say I'm familiar with that. No.
You must have heard of the Whitby goth weekends.
Never. No.
Okay.
Must have stayed clear of going on that weekend.
Other side of the country, Whitby, because of Dracula.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right? Fair enough. So yeah. Okay.
And yeah, in terms of a celebration of subculture, fantastic. All up for it. Brings a bit of money in, bit of tourism, good fun. Highlights the area, but yeah, the Rebellion Festival in Blackpool is huge.
Right.
Speaking of another festival, the Libham Festival has gone from strength to strength.
It's I think I don't know if it's from living round here in Lancashire, but I would say it's up there with the biggest festivals in the UK at the moment.
I know it's not
everyone talks about it. Yeah,
it's huge, and I remember not being snotty about it, but thinking, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then it really hit me when a few years ago they booked the Strokes.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
Well, you had Shania there last year.
Well, I know.
Well, this year, kind of.
It's growing each year. It's getting bigger. I know we've got fans in the team who go. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
They've probably already bought the early bird tickets. I don't know.
Probably.
Which is it's great for the area.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good.
Okay, so speaking of the area, our hospitals, Royal Preston Hospital and Chorley. So we've already said how Preston is on the up, and you know there's change in the city centre, there's investment, redevelopment, the leisure and the infrastructure guild wheel. Do you know about Preston Youth Zone?
No.
Great new development happening in the centre of Preston. It's going to be fantastic. I believe it's opening next year.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. We'll talk about it on the podcast in the future because I think it's going to be a really important key stakeholder to kind of connect into. Now the hospital itself, obviously, for those who don't know, and maybe you're listening to this thinking, well, I might want to work there, I don't know the area, I want to find out more. The hospital is a major trauma centre of regional specialisms. We've got Rosemere, which is a cancer centre. It's quite a big site in North Preston.
Absolutely. I mean, the Lancashire Eye Centre, which we'll touch on shortly.
Yeah.
That's just got it's got an award. It was on North West Tonight the other week.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in a lot of areas really leading the pack with it all. Yeah.
Absolutely, and because of that we've got you know, leading clinicians and personalities who are at the forefront of their areas. So instantly I think of people like Professor Munivar, who I believe he'll play it down, but he was instrumental during COVID and with respiratory and the proning technique and what they were doing on the wards, and he was in the media quite a bit. So yeah, a wonderful individual, part of a fantastic team, and yeah, if you want to know more about the hospital, reach out, get in touch, because we've got stuff on the internet. We can talk. There's obviously people you can talk to as well. But yeah, for Preston, as a trust, I think it's great. And obviously, Chorley in South Ribble, like you say, got the eye hospital, and the eye centre. For people who don't know Chorley, it's just a charming market town, isn't it?
Yeah. I've never been.
Have you never been to Chorley?
I've never been to Chorley. I've been to the hospital.
Yeah.
I went for the first time to the hospital. I went to the theatres department, and we did a video there. And yeah, it's so much smaller than Preston Hospital, but yeah, brilliant. Yeah, great place.
Chorley is proper Lancashire. I love Chorley. The people are so happy. They are genuinely. They are so happy, and warm and welcoming. And I feel. I go to Chorley, it's like having a warm hug. It's gorgeous.
Right, okay.
I know some people are a bit down on it, and I'm sure there's places in Chorley which are less attractive than others, but I love the market, I love the centre of Chorley, I love the people. I find them very warm and humorous. They have a lovely, some might say happy-go-lucky attitude, but I just find it's just warm. They're just beautiful people who care. From my experience, anyway. Clearly, other people don't, but I do. It's cosy. I love it. But yeah, it's a different pace. You're quite right. It is a smaller site, but if you've got Preston is quite rock and roll and fast paced, and the major trauma unit and all the rest of it. Whereas Chorley is a bit more gentle and a bit more relaxed, elective surgery.
Yeah.
Two different sides of the same coin. Love them both.
And they complement each other well as well. I think that's what works for this trust is, you've got Chorley they still have an A&E, and they've got some leading areas, but complement that major trauma centre and that really busy A&E.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a really clever thing to say. Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that at all. Now, obviously, speaking of different areas as well, we should probably mention that our staff come from all over, not just the local area, though we do have a lot of local staff. We have people who move here and come from all over the world, from Lancaster to Lahore. It's a real melting pot of cultures and nationalities and background and expertise, and even, like I say, within a 5-10 mile radius of the hospital, the people who work here all bring different skill sets and experience, and might have studied in local universities, but likewise have not gone to university, and then, like in my case, I didn't think I'd work for the NHS, but I came in later, having worked in diverse industries like the wine trade, antiques and marketing and PR, and then I end up in healthcare in the NHS. So yeah, I think there's obviously a range of jobs that we have and skill sets that we need, and then that's reflected obviously from where our staff come from as well. What would you say your experience is of where our staff come from? Well, you moved here, so...
Yeah, I moved up here. I mean, in terms of my experiences with being a recruitment officer, sometimes you do have to look further for jobs, and you need to look further for candidates as well, and we always welcome anyone to apply. Obviously, there's some restrictions, but we've recruited, in terms of surgery and theatres, a lot of people from overseas who have the expertise, just want to help people, want to relocate, and like you say, it can be from down south, down the road, or from India, or from Africa, from Europe, anywhere, literally anywhere. You could probably say nearly every country we get a lot of interest from, which is just brilliant for a place like Lancashire Teaching Hospitals, because you get so many different people, so many different cultures, and people to challenge of what's seen as normal just because you might be from this area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. Now, I think there's one last thing to say. We're biased as well. What do you think of Lancashire?
Brilliant, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't live here. I didn't think it was great.
yeah.
After 12 months, I'd be going back down the road. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Like you say, it's difficult to really describe it because you don't want to say it's central to everywhere. So I'll leave it for a day and come back to it.
Yeah.
But it just is. It's rural, but not at the same time because you've got those different places to visit in Preston. You've got the parks. You've got all sorts, and it's just, yeah, I wouldn't live here if it wasn't great.
Oh.
So that's why I'm still here, and will probably live here for a long time, raise my family here, and yeah, just see what great things Lancashire's got to offer next. Like, there's so many investments happening, so yeah, it's exciting to see.
I totally agree, and I mean, I could have done a whole series on this, so this one episode is not. I mean, I'm sat here now, my head is motoring. I'm thinking, we've not mentioned Wallace and Gromit.
Oh yeah.
We've not mentioned Danny Boyle.
Yeah. The biggest mention is Avon Park.
Not mentioned. The Spice Girls played Avon Park, don't you know?
Did they?
Yeah, they did.
Wow.
Yeah, they did.
Wow.
Yeah, my wife was there.
I mean, that is iconic, to be fair.
Yeah.
And there's no pictures of that around Avon Park, which I'm very surprised at.
No, you can find them on the internet.
Yeah.
You can get them, but yeah. You're right. So but let's leave that. There's a hidden depths to Lancashire. There's apparently Camelot. There's rumours people think Camelot was in Lancashire.
Oh really?
Yeah, this is what too much for the podcast. There's so much history and people and individuals. Frank Whittle jet engine, 1935, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Just off the A59, apparently.
Apparently.
This is what I mean. There's
Yeah.
so much going on, and a bit, but not take away from anywhere else.
No.
Clearly, there's other historic counties with connections to interesting anecdotes as well.
Do they have their own day though?
I think there are like Yorkshire Day and stuff. I've never heard of Essex Day.
No.
But I do know I'm pretty confident there's a Yorkshire Day. Anyway, we're not going into the...
Be another War of the Roses.
Yeah, we're not
Yorkshire
starting. Keep your arguments to your pub quiz, I think.
Right.
But yeah, last thing to say is thank you everyone for listening. Please share, please get in touch. If we've got any historical facts wrong, feel free to correct us and get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah, and enjoy Lancashire Day on the 27th of November.
Yeah, it's going out of this. Right, bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.